Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Jonathan Lipp here from the 12th Annual Big Apple Film Festival, taking place November 4th through the 7th at Village East Cinemas. We're here today with Simone Barsky from the Sundance Now Doc Club. Simone, can you tell us a little bit about the Sundance Now Doc Club?
Sure. Sundance Now Doc Club is a new video streaming service dedicated to documentaries. We just launched in October, and it's been a fantastic ride since.
Cool. Very nice. You know, one of the things that I've noticed over probably in the last 20 years is that, you know, back in the 1980s, early 1990s, the concept of the documentary automatically struck people as like, okay, it's a thing for a classroom, educational, maybe kind of boring. And then I would say in the last 15, 20 years, it's become much more mainstream due to people like Michael Moore and Morgan Spurlock. What do you think the future is right now for the documentary genre as a whole?
That's a very big question. I think that the way people have thought about documentary has really changed. Just even thinking about reality television, even what is documentary is really up for debate, but I also think that because it's a lot easier to watch documentaries now, you don't necessarily have to go to a theater to go see them, and you don't have to, be a History Channel watcher to see them. People are really getting into them a lot more. You'll find, especially on subscription services like Netflix or Sundance Now Doc Club, people are really turning to online to watch these kinds of docs. You might not necessarily want to watch them on the big screen, but there's a documentary for everybody out there who's interested in any subject, and now with the web, it's really easy to find that.
And in terms of theatrical release, do you see a sustainable future for documentaries released in the theatrical arena?
Yes, of course. But I think the way that filmmakers should really start thinking about releasing their film, it's not just like a one-and-done deal anymore. You can't just, put your film in theaters and expect people to show up and call it the end of the day. You really have to cultivate your audience before the film is even released in theaters, and really see it out through digital and through all of the other windowing platforms to really get the widest audience. It's really not all about theatrical anymore, of course. Yeah.
Would you say, if you're an emerging documentary filmmaker, would you say that documentary film festivals are an essential part of the process in terms of releasing your work? Hot Docs, Silver Docs, Doc NYC, are these festivals like really an important part of the process in terms of putting your work out there as a documentary filmmaker?
I am a little biased to say yes, of course, because I love documentary film festivals. I love attending them, and I think that a lot of press comes out of it. It gives you a lot of leverage, particularly when you're selling your film, to be able to say that it's hit these festivals. But that being said, the barrier for entry for filmmakers these days is much lower than it's ever been ever. You have things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo that really allow you to grow your fan base early on, and through VHX and all of these other direct platforms, you can really take ownership of distributing your own film. So even if your film doesn't necessarily get into a documentary film festival, it's not something to be totally discouraged by. Every film is different, has its own audience, and sometimes the festival route isn't the right thing for that particular film.
Okay, so it's on a per situation basis. And the last question I want to ask you is, there's so much content on YouTube now and Vimeo. I mean, if you look at the statistics, there's millions of hours of footage being uploaded onto YouTube every minute. How do you separate yourself nowadays? Years ago it was different. You had 5, 6 movies out in the theater, and if you were one of those movies, you were special. You were in the theaters. But now there's so much content, it's just unbelievable. The market's so saturated. How do you separate yourself from just being another YouTuber, so to speak?
That's a great question. Well, before even answering that question, I think it's important to say that just because there's a lot more content out there doesn't mean that it was necessarily easier to get people's attention by having a theatrical release, because even getting that theatrical release in the first place was hard. It still is, of course, but now there are other routes, But I think that really the way filmmakers have to think about themselves these days isn't just, you know, I create this piece of content or this film and I put it out there. It's really developing a personal brand where, you know, you're giving absolute love and care to the topics that you're covering. So, for example, somebody like Gary Hustwit, who is the filmmaker behind Helvetica and Objectified and some really great films, he, you know, he owns his fan base. He tours the country. He creates books. Like, the film is only one part of really an entire sort of campaign that he's building around it, and a lot of filmmakers have been doing this. So I think if you really want to stand out these days, you have to really go above and beyond in connecting with your fan base, and that could mean different things for every film.
I hear what you're saying. Create an entire world. Like, the film should only be one component of something much larger. Right. And, sorry, just one last thing. How realistic is it right now, if I'm a kid coming out of film school, how realistic is it to have a sustainable career as a documentary filmmaker in today's world?
As I said, you know, you can't just think of yourself as a filmmaker. This is a 365-day-a-year job of promoting yourself, of meeting people, and you know, I guess it's important that before somebody even makes the decision to become a documentary filmmaker, that they recognize that this is a full-on commitment. I mean, you have to be willing to do everything for your film and really put the time in to meet people and introduce yourself and represent yourself. Yeah.
It's really about branding.
Of course. But if you're willing to work hard for it, I see no reason why it can't happen.
I love it. Simone, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you at the festival.